Hi, this is Little Dwarf playing games while rambling incoherently into a microphone. Why? Well, just because I can, and I continue with The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings, modded. Now, this episode will be another part of just reading the journal, so if you're not interested in that, you can just skip it, because there will literally be no gameplay. So, let's get to it. I have more monster descriptions. For example, Bull of Wars. This monster does not like the company of its own kind. One might even say it is like a poet in that it is an individualist. Much like an artist, it likes to show off before its lessers. Thus, it is at times accompanied by smaller, much weaker beasts, like neckers or rotfiends. Bullivores are prone to giving peculiar displays wherein they kill their retinue in a fanciful manner, for example by spitting acid on a rotfiend that in turn explode. As they are slow creatures, the strong style should be used when fighting bullivores. Their skin is tough, and they easily shrug off weaker blows, apart from which they heal as quickly as trolls do. A bullivore can kill a slower opponent with the sheer momentum of its terrible charge. One should wait for its attack and dodge it, as immediately after it rushes forward and misses, the bullivore would be stunned and thus defenseless. The bullivore uses a terrifying weapon against a swifter foe. It vomits filth that is both caustic and poisonous, so its foe both chokes on the venom and dissolves into a puddle. The bullivore is a necrophage, so it should be fought using a blade coated with the necrophage oil. This coating aggravates the beast's wounds and gives the Witcher a huge advantage. There is no point in preparing common poisons or oils that increase bleeding, as the creature is immune to both. Harpies. There are many harpy species, and all are kleptomaniacs, though some steal dreams instead of baubles. They especially like dreams laden with strong emotions, such as nightmares that recur time after again. The harpy's victims lose such dreams, which is actually a blessing in the case of nightmares, and the beasts enclose them in crystals, creating items that strongly radiate magic. Mages desire the dreams stolen by those creatures, so much that they have bred harpies in order that they may filch their booty at daybreak. Yet it is rare for a stolen dream or nightmare to be powerful enough, or to come from a powerful enough creature to satisfy a sorcerer. As winged creatures, harpies attack swiftly from a great distance before their prey can notice them. After landing a blow, they flee for a safe spot. Pinning them to the ground and denying them flight is often the only solution. Thus incapacitated, they become clumsy as hens. Stunned with a bomb, hit with the Igni or the art sign, the beasts prove easy to kill, especially fighting with the fast style. The harpy's greatest strength is their ability to fly, but they can be grounded with the use of a trap. Because the creature's wings are feathered, they are easily set aflame, so using the Igni sign against harpies is always a good result. The beasts have excellent sense of direction and balance, and even when flailing about near the ground, they can easily regain the sky, so attempts to knock them down are doomed to fail. Bruxe. The Bruxa finds the smell of garlic to be socially inconvenient at most, and she considers holy symbols to be interesting examples of handicraft. She endures the light of the sun as well, but she prefers the darkness of the night. As you can see, you can stuff most stereotypical preconceptions about vampires up your arse when it comes to the Bruxa, so what works? The blade of a silver sword, as usual. Apart from silver, she can be wounded with fire and a stake, provided the latter is as long as a wagon's drawbar. Less powerful Bruxa often hunt in packs, making it easier to corner prey. If threatened, they attack with their talons and rip the victim apart, pausing only to savor the blood of the dying foe. The greatest threat to a Witcher is the Bruxa's voice. The creature can screech with such force that the shockwave will knock even a huge man down, making him easy prey for the vampiress. Blindness is as great a threat as this ghastly scream. Bruxa deprive their enemies of their sight in order to play cat and mouse with them. Until the sight returns, one should defend themselves against their attacks in any way possible, for example using the Quen sign. The Bruxa have masterful control over their blood circulation, rendering poisons and oils that increase bleeding ineffective against them. They are good at defending themselves against Witcher tricks, but they are still vulnerable to fire and can be knocked down and finished off as they try to get up. Draugirs. Draugirs are absolutely bound to the Draug's orders. They feel no fear or pain. They cannot be forced to retreat. They are ideal soldiers. Their coming is always sudden, and so one must remain constantly vigilant in the presence of their leader, for his subordinates appear in dire moments to defend the Draug and tip the scales in his favor. These raids are protected by heavy armor and a shield. A Witcher should first force them to expose themselves, knocking away their shields and grinding down their armor. The best chance to wound the creature comes from the Draugir's charges. One should evade the attack and lunge at its unprotected back. The monsters are slow in battle, so one needs to weaken them methodically with strong sword blows, and then finish them off. In life, Draugirs were soldiers or knights, and in death they retain their proficiency in combat, so one needs to defend oneself against their blows, their lethal counter-strikes in particular, with extreme care. Draugirs are susceptible to spectre oil, so one should coat a silver blade with it before battle. Poisons and oils increasing bleeding are of no use. These raids can be defeated using fire, but silver sword is of course the most effective. Draugs. An arc raid. The Draug never stoops to doing anything with its own hands. It has lackeys for that, always wraiths, revenants, or other restless spirits. Having been a king or a commander in life, the Draug retains its charisma in death, and deathly subordinates always blindly obey its orders. Thus one needs to exterminate all manners of servants on the way to its underground palace, wilderness keep, or other foreboding abode. Only then can he face the Draug itself. That's literally tradition for you. The Draug can be described in various ways, as has been said, but is always a lethal foe. Forget its huge strength, invulnerability to pain, fearlessness and bloodlust. One cannot defeat a Draug using conventional means. As with every wraith, there is some tragic event connected to it, forcing the creature to remain among the living. The Draug is untouchable, unreachable for anyone who is not part of that story. This is why the mystical hero has to get involved in various brawls and pass through many trials. By overcoming these obstacles, he enters the Draug's world and becomes worthy of facing the monstrosity. The raid's leader is so powerful that it mocks simple Witcher tricks. The one sure thing in fighting the Draug, it must be said, is a silver sword. Okay, I read the other entries already. So, let's go on to the journal. Locations. Vergen. This town in the north of Edirn was founded by dwarves, who established mines in the surrounding hills. As was their custom, they carved their homes and public edifices directly into the rock formations, granting Vergen a unique architectural style. The town was an important trade center, one of the roads through it leading directly into the country's interior. Humans had also attempted to settle the area, but the disturbances that plagued the Pontar Valley left most of the villages burned or in ruins. Nevertheless, while we arrived in Vergen, it was teeming with humans in addition to mainly dwarven population. Saska's peasant rebels and a group of Edirnian nobles had made camp there and promptly began to measure each other with menacing glares. Meanwhile, all the groups that had assembled in the area were mistrustful of Jorvet Skoyatel, who strove to keep themselves with unmistakably elven aloofness. Truly, if it was not for Henselt's army making camp nearby, this whole rabble would have been at each other's throats in no time. Peasant militia units, knights without titles or estate, and seasoned dwarven volunteers fought heroically side by side, forcing the Kadveni veterans to pay for every inch of ground with their blood. Yet the doom seemed nigh, and the battle's outcome inevitable, that is, until Jorvet arrived with Skoyatel reinforcements, just in time to turn the tide. Vergen won its independence with courage, steel, and the blood of the fallen. Mines of Vergen. They say that plants unseen anywhere on the surface grew in these mines, among others the one needed for Saska's cure. The area around Vergen was supposedly riddled with mining shafts and corridors. Some had been not used for long, others had been closed more recently. I am no expert on mining, and the dwarves can be extremely secretive and tight-lipped about the subject. The few allusions they made, however, painted a picture of caves, tunnels, and excavations drowned in darkness. At one time these mines had accounted for Vergen's significance, but now they were abandoned and haunted by dangerous creatures. Needless to say, this description did not encourage yours truly to examine them closer. Forest ravines, wooded gullies scattered between Vergen and King Henselt's camp. Innumerable monsters, including trolls, inhabit these ravines, so they were not exactly ideal places to picnic, but a traveler following the gullies would be relatively hidden from prying eyes, a fact which, as you will learn, Geralt took full advantage of. Battlefield. This sight was not much to behold, even on a sunny day, yet it was here that several days earlier a bloody battle had ended in a magical cataclysm. Rocky gullies opened into a plain scarred with furrows and craters, dug by trebuchet missiles and magical explosions detonated by the sorceress Sabrina Glevisig. Tall reddish grass covered part of the flatland, the rusting armor and bleached bones of the fallen nestled among it. Once the curse was activated, however, a ghastly mist engulfed the section of the battlefield. Within it stretched a world seemingly pulled from a nightmare, a world in which ghosts of the fallen endlessly reenacted the battle that had claimed their lives. Once the Witcher lifted the curse, the mist dissipated and the spectres of the fallen vanished into the beyond. Camp followers' encampment. The inevitable hodgepodge camp of followers had settled just beyond the palisade of Henselt's military camp. The area was home to all manner of rabble, such as craftsmen, prostitutes, traders, thieves, and vagabonds. In other words, all those needed to keep an army on its feet. Vernon Roche was directed to settle with his soldiers among the camp followers. The instructions from the Kedwenis was meant as a jab at the Temerians, but the Blue Stripes honestly preferred the company of scoundrels to that of the warriors bearing the unicorn crest on their chest. Kedweni Camp. The Kedweni military camp greeted us from afar with a cacophony typical of such encampments. Officers' commands and sentries' shouts, mixed with the growling of platoon leaders, enlightening enlisted men as to their mothers' professions and why these ladies charged so little for their services. Veterans cursed, recruits snivelled, whores giggled, horses neighed, and dogs barked. The din was accompanied by a jumble of smells, the smell of several thousand men who considered guard duty in the rain to be an adequate bath cannot be mistaken for any other, and this blended with the scent of boiling cabbage, food wraps, and stables. Compared to the noxious odor that the wind carried from the camp latrines on a sunny day, the smell of the Kairan's lair seemed like that of a flowering meadow. Okay, characters. There's like 8 bajillion of them, so let's get to it. Sabrina Glevisig. The sorceress Sabrina Glevisig was from Ardcraig, the capital of Kedwen, and had been King Henselt's advisor. The reader, however, should not be deceived by this term. This true daughter of the Kedweni wilderness was famous for her determination and temperament. There was no exaggeration to the rumors that on many occasions she would interrupt the king, thumping her fist on the table and yelling that he should shut up and listen, and the king would indeed shut up and listen. Sabrina Glevisig's predatory nature was paired with an equally predatory beauty, which she emphasized through appropriately chosen attire. Add to it the power she commanded as a sorceress, and it should become clear as to what she owed her strong position not only in Kedwen, but also beyond its borders. This position could not protect her from the king's wrath, however, and when she failed Henselt one time too many, the sorceress ended up at the stake, where her life ended. Sheldon Skaggs. I met the dwarf Sheldon Skaggs for the first time, if I remember correctly, a few years back under the ancient oak, Bleberries, where I treated the local Count Palatine and the public gathered in a great number to hear my performance. Skaggs is a mighty warrior, straightforward as all of his folk, plain of word, and yet at the same time sensitive about his race, and especially about the honor of dwarven women. As a veteran of Sodden and Brenna, where he fought as an officer in the Mahakam volunteer detachment, he appreciates songs of military and heroic deeds. He does not hesitate to express his appreciation to materials means, thus disproving any who would portray old dwarves as misers, insensitive to true art. Jarpen Zigrin. Our friendship with Jarpen Zigrin stretches back a long time. It began during the famed hunt for the Golden Dragon, which not only was not caught, but also beat up its hunters. These events were later described in one of my ballads, and anyone interested in that story should read it. Zigrin, like most of his kin, is characterized not only by his love of gold, but also by his bawdy sense of humor, his sober outlook, pragmatism, and loyalty to his friends. Geralt mentioned that he later met Jarpen and his lads in Majesty's Secret Service, the Majesty in question being Henselt of Kedwin, for whom they were exporting a secret cargo. Though their own situation was not cheerful at all, they nevertheless aided the Witcher, easily proving that a dwarf won't abandon a friend in need. Death Mold. Apart from a few chance encounters at official banquets, Geralt never had the occasion to meet and speak more extensively with this sorceress on Thanet Island during the Bloody Coup, when all manner of mages jumped at each other's throats and their council and conclave ceased to exist. Deathmold and his brother Dirthelm, both in the service of King Estred of Kovir at the time, attempted to remain neutral as the events unfolded. To no avail, however, as those who had allied themselves with Nilfgaard thought nothing of the impartiality of others, and many mages simply perished, brought down in fanciful ways by their colleagues' spells, or pierced by the arrows of the Scoia'tael, summoned to the island by the plotters. Dirthelm met such a fate, while Detmold saved himself by fleeing. Detmold then filled the opening for a sorcerer's advisor at the court of King Henselt of Kedwin, and proceeded to place all of his abilities at the monarch's disposal. During the Battle of Vergen, Deathmold aided the attackers, using magic to destroy fortifications and key defensive positions. It is clear that had they been deprived of his talents, the Kedwenis would not have penetrated so far. Though Henselt was spared because of his loyal lineage, Deathmold met a fate appropriate for tyrants' faithful and hated servants. The sorcerer's life ended in the central square of Vergen, a town he had hoped to seize and bring to its knees. Prince Stennis. After King Demavend's death, Prince Stennis became the heir to a Edirnian throne, at least in name. However, pride and chilly disposition rarely win love of one's subjects, and that was very much Stennis' problem. His youth did not strengthen his claim either. Though no one openly questioned the prince's claim to the crown, Stennis did not have enough support to actually have it placed upon its head. Given this situation, sitting out important events would have been political suicide. The war for the Pontar Valley gave him the ideal chance to bolster his position by demonstrating what a good ruler he would make. History has shown time and again that when the realm is in chaos, deeds rather than words grant legitimacy in the eyes of one's subjects. Stennis greatly desired to prove himself the equal or superior to the Virgin of Edirn. He had strong support from the nobility, yet the common folk had few reasons to sympathize with him. His refusal to help Saskia said much about the youth's personality, and none of it good. The young prince was found guilty of poisoning Saskia, but he could consider himself lucky as he was merely imprisoned and not torn to shreds by the mob. Saskia. Nothing drives a revolt forward like the right leader, especially one who is a young girl known for performing miraculous feats of valor on the battlefield. From Joan of the Arc Coast to the infamous Falca, history is full of women who led fanatically devoted hosts to victory. Interestingly, all those heroines were not only charismatic, but also extremely beautiful. The squint-eyed, gap-toothed, and pock-marked generally have trouble rousing the masses. Saskia, whom men would follow into fire, was no exception. She was a smooth-skinned lass with blonde hair, dark brows, large eyes, and shapely lips. Her full breasts perfectly complemented her rounded hips. In other words, she was an ideal icon for a rebellion. For dear reader, if a man in battle receives the appropriate motivation in form of a lovely female Ars, he is very likely to achieve miracles in its wake. When there is no such Ars to lead the way, the freedom fighter's thoughts quickly turn to Harvest Time, his own woman, and a half-pint of booze at the inn. News had already reached us of the heroic Saskia, the woman who had held Kedveni armies at bay. At the time, however, it all seemed a little more than exaggerated rumors. As with any true hero, there were incredible tales about Saskia. Some claimed she was invulnerable to fire, and had thus survived the terrible battle when Sabrina had rained the very flames down upon the combatants. The girl was also famous for killing a dragon. One would be hard-pressed to find a better matter for local hero. Word of Saskia's deeds had traveled far beyond Edirne's borders. She was the heroine in the eyes of many. What surprised me the most is that she had made an impression on Yorveth, who had high hopes for her. Even Yorveth grew dew-eyed when he gazed at her. That was especially puzzling because the Scoia'tael are generally unmoved by human women, even those who are thought to be extremely beautiful. Once Geralt had discovered the whole truth about Saskia, all the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. Saskia, a hybrid dragon, could assume any form she desired, even that of a human. Saskia achieved a great victory, adding another chapter to her legend. There was, however, something baffling about the speed with which she set off to Loch Muin, where she hoped to convince the rest of the North to recognize the Pontar Valley as an independent state. Saskia was no longer her own mistress. He or she would have commanded the dragon, who would have commanded the dragon, stood to attain great power indeed. Philippa Eilhart. This was hardly the first time Geralt and I encountered Philippa Eilhart, jewel of the court at Tretogor, and once a trusted sorceress of King Vizimir II. Philippa was one of the most talented mages of those times. Only a handful ever mastered the art of polymorphy. Her intellect and the influence she held at the Redanian court were not to be underestimated. Proud, independent, and extremely beautiful, as graceful in a fanciful yet elegant dress as in men's traveling outfit, she was beyond doubt one of the most attractive women I have ever known. Yet I would not count Philippa among the most pleasant of females, despite her indisputable though chilly charm. Her gaze alone was enough to make the most confident men shudder, and the mere thought of spending a night with her would make their flesh creep. At the time, Philippa Eilhart was staying in the town of Vergen as a part of Saskia the Dragonslayer's inner circle. Her motives remained unclear, to say the least. The former court magician had never been known for her altruism. However, one cannot deny that without her help, Geralt would not have found his way through the magical mist. Philippa rendered him an invaluable service at the time. Her qualifications in the area of curses, magic, and supernatural phenomena were undeniable. If there was anyone to help the Witcher in this regards back then, it was certainly Miss Eilhart. Still, I was extremely glad that it was Geralt and not I who was forced to speak with the Tretogor magician. It was Philippa who gave the Witcher the list of the ingredients for the antidote for the poison plaguing Saskia. The knowledge for recipes, ingredients, and their specific properties is always extremely helpful in learning magical arcana, and few could equal Eilhart in that regard. Philippa has tricked everyone, not only casting a charm on Saskia under the guise of aid, but also using Geralt and Yorveth in her machinations. On the one hand, it was inevitable. On the other, it left a bitter aftertaste, giving rise to the thought that the sorceress's misdeeds are responsible for the widespread mistrust between their profession and perhaps even towards the female gender. Eilhart abducted Saskia and left for Loch Muin. Back then, we did not know what she was planning. Henselt. The Witcher once said in his life that he had met thieves who resembled city councillors who were like begging louts, harlots who behaved like princesses who smelled like pregnant cows, and kings who looked like thieves. King Henselt did not exactly look like a thief, but with all due respect he was not far off. He owed the resemblance only partially to his bearded countenance, beady eyes, and wandering yet penetrating gaze. His annexation of Lormark, called Upper Edirne by its natives, at the time when Edirne was fighting with Nilfgaard horde at the southern border, was considered a theft also. The now dead King Demavend judged his deed severely and communicated this in curt yet resonant words. Yet this was not the sole reason for King Henselt's reputation as an unpleasant person, much bolstered by the monarch's ambitions and quarrels with his neighbors, and by his ruthless policies towards non-humans, whom he persecuted with a passion, squandering his realm's strength and funds. The aging Henselt did not have a living heir, and the rumor was that he had found producing another son somewhat troublesome. Henselt's virility may have lessened with age, but his ambition certainly did not. The king wanted to wage a war and reclaim Lormark, a province he had already given up once, no matter the cost. Henselt accepted the unthinkable. He shed some of his royal blood for a stranger. Anything was acceptable if it furthered the pursuit of his long-desired war. The ruler could not have felt worse if he had been kicked in the crotch. Defeated by the Vergenian irregulars comprising peasantry, local gentry, dwarves and elves, and led by a female, he was forced to renounce his territorial claims to Edirn and officially confirm it at Lochmuin's summit. I will remember the look on his grizzled mug for the rest of my life. Oaks. When I first heard Oak's name, the Witcher had no idea who he was. He did not have the slightest inkling of the role this individual would play in our story. Oaks was probably one of the Witchers Roche has mentioned. He and Serit were trying to cover Leto's escape, while Sheila located their hideout. Though they both died in the end, they completed their task, buying the last Kingslayer time to flee. Sometimes a person's name sinks into memory and brings fear to one's heart at first mention. Who was this mysterious Serit? What goals drove him to play the role he would play? Geralt had yet to learn all of this. Serit was probably one of the Witchers Roche had mentioned. He and Oaks were trying to cover Leto's escape when Sheila located their hideout. Though they both died in the end, they completed their task, buying the last Kingslayer enough time to flee. Sheila de Tankerville. I know from experience that magicians are not above lusting for power. Among sorceresses alone, there are many whose ambition led them to pull strings, moving kings and other mighty forces of the world, to command the elements in spectacular fashion, summon genies, bend fate, dictate royal proclamations, or at least force others to eat chicken with cutlery. This is why magicians such as Sheila de Tankerville, known as the Koviri Loner, stood apart from the others. Lady Sheila was not known to interfere in politics, at least not visibly, instead dedicating her days to research. Strict, calm and collected, unlike other sorceresses, she did not display her feminine charms, nor did she flirt with men, jiggling her posterior before them at every occasion. Though, and I must remain true to myself here, the world would undeniably be a much poorer place without typical sorceresses. The reason for Sheila de Tankerville's presence in the backwater town like Flotsam was initially a mystery, yet it quickly became clear when that she had come there because of the Chiron, the river monster. For sorceresses gladly use the organs of exotic creatures as ingredients for magical preparations, and Sheila was not exception. Sheila's presence also turned out to be a lucrative opportunity for Zoltan, however odd that might sound. The dwarf cut gems for her magical apparatus. One has to admit that Sheila's help proved to be useful. The sorceress did not fear the monster and bravely fought, aiding the Witcher with her powers. It appears that Sheila had very specific plans concerning the King Henselt of Kedwin and his attempts to father an heir. From what I've been able to tell, the meddling of Sheila and other sorceresses in the world of politics was further reaching than anyone had imagined. The shocking truth about Sheila de Tankerville and the most important pieces of the puzzle concerning her events in the role in the north would not be fully revealed for quite some time, but Geralt chanced upon the first clue of her complicity by pure coincidence. One of the dreams stolen by the Harpies pointed to her as the one who had commissioned the assassination of the King of Edirn, Demavend. Dandelion. It is always awkward to write about oneself, yet I cannot shirk this duty. In an effort to preempt any accusations of partiality, I shall set down the humblest of notes, relating only the best-known facts. Dandelion, in reality the Viscount de Letanov, though titles are unimportant, is a certified troubadour, a lecturer at Oxenford University, a persona known among society as a charmer, a poet, a dandy and an unparalleled lover. Almost everyone north of the Yaroga has heard of him, and those who have not are either boors or simpletons or both, and as a result of which their opinions do not matter in the slightest. Dandelion played an important and significant part in the most important events of the era. He loved, fought, negotiated, and acquired immense knowledge, even of the forbidden variety. His works are a testimony of the times, but it is his moving poetic tropes that have brought him true fame. The important thing in this story is that Dandelion was a friend to Geralt of Rivia, possibly his only true friend. He was Geralt's confidant, advisor, companion in misery, for it was impossible to experience good fortune in the Witcher's company. What Geralt did, Dandelion faithfully recounted, and no one should give credence to those who accuse the humble chronicler of confabulating. Discretion, a virtue I have always professed, obliges me to remain silent about the circumstances in which I, through the person of Vernon Roche, began working with the Temerian intelligence. Suffice to say, there comes a moment in everyone's life when facing great events they cannot remain indifferent, and so I could not stand aside as history took shape before my very eyes. My dedication to the cause brought me to Flotsam at the time. There, through an unfortunate incident involving twins at a local brothel, a town guard, a dog, a cat, an oil lamp, I would end up on the scaffold in the town square, from which I barely escaped with my life. Obviously, when Geralt decided to continue his search in Vergen, located on the borderland soon to be engulfed by flames of war, I chose to accompany him. For the Witcher could at times be naive as a child, and knew as much about politics as a ghoul knows about cooking. Thus the chances were slim to none that, bereft of my help, he would manage to find new leads without getting embroiled in some trouble along the way. As his friend, I could clearly not allow that. Having taken part in many adventures by Geralt's side, when he asked for my help, I agreed without hesitation. I had already been imperiled when helping him in less rewarding tasks than using poetry to lure an unparalleled demonic lover. Thus I had a chance to risk my life in the name of three most beautiful values: friendship, poetry, and love. There was no other decision to make. Geralt and Jorveth headed for Loch Muin to meet their destiny, yet I decided to stay in Vergen for a bit longer. I had more than enough material for new ballads, therefore I fought the urge to reach Loch Muin in time to witness the important events transpiring there. Thus I know the rest of the story only from the accounts of others, yet I present it here as faithfully as possible. Anything omitted was surely not worth a mention in the first place. Asirevar Anahid. This sorceress came from Nilfgaard, or more precisely from Vicovaro, a distinction of extreme importance to the highborns in the Empire, as I can attest from personal experience. This is because the term Nilfgaardian is reserved for native residents of the Empire's capital and its immediate vicinity. Asirvar Anahid was nothing like the stereotypical Nilfgaardian sorceress, unkempt things in unfashionable attire. On the contrary, she wore well-cut dresses and underlined her beauty with just the right touch of makeup, following the examples of our sorceresses in the north. As momentous events played out in Loch Muin, Asira was murdered, probably by her own countrymen, possibly on the order of the Emperor himself. The hazy circumstances surrounding her death gave rise to much speculation in Nilfgaard, fueling propaganda and political conflict for some time to come. Vanhemar, Shillard Fitz-Osterlane's personal sorcerer, had only just made Geralt acquaintance when he died at the Witcher's hand. The Visionary. During my travels I have met many prophets, preachers of the divine truth, who frothed and gibbered foretellings about the end of the world, depravity of women, lechery of kings, and rising taxes. The visionary extolled the martyrdom and sanctity of Sabrina Glevisig, and these ideas have become the foundations of a local cult. Supposedly, the sorceress's favor made him invulnerable and safe. However, there was no way to decipher how much truth lay in his tales. Baltimore. Having spent some time in Vergen, I have heard much about the famous runesmith Master Baltimore, whom the local dwarves revered. Mastering the profession in question requires practice over scores of years, and runes cast into weapons or tools supposedly grant them unusual properties. We did not meet Master Baltimore, however, as he had disappeared several years before the event described herein, yet his handiwork was and is still reputed to be the pinnacle of the difficult art of forging runic signs. Either Baltimore was really paranoid, or he had good reasons to believe his life was in danger. Thanks to some notes, Geralt ascertained that the runesmith's disappearance has been the work of his apprentice, envious of his teacher's secrets. Succubus. The torched village near Dvergen proved to be home of a real succubus. This beautiful creature, possessing hooves instead of feet, drew handsome young men in order to seduce them and feed on their life forces. The seductress was accused of brutally murdering young men, and the accusation seemed to be solid, for you must know that the unpleasant scent of sulfur is not the sole inconvenience one must endure when encountering a succubi, who can be as dangerous as vampires. Geralt investigated the murders thoroughly. He concluded that the succubus was innocent and that it was being framed by a jealous lover. The Witcher cleared the seductress of charges, and she proceeded to thank him in her customary beautiful manner. The Sheetroll of Vergen. I can confirm, based on my own experience, that the feelings of jealousy for a partner and demands for monogamy, even if made for wrong reasons, can cause many a quarrel and even on occasion outright end the relationship. As it turned out, the Sheetrolls are not immune to these feelings and are perfectly capable of turning into screamers, thus spoiling the idyll of the family hut. Once more Geralt put the cart before the horse, as the Witcher's rule go, and stood alongside the monster rather than the humans. He even managed to convince the troll to return to her husband, who eagerly awaited her. The final episode took place when the both creatures arrived in Vergen to help to defend it. The Kedweni had occasion to learn the phrase, "The monstrosities of war," can mean more than a figure of speech. Troll of Vergen. A troll kidnapping a beautiful sorceress? I could believe that. A troll abandoned by his wife for that reason. Now that's ballad material. Yet not many people would believe a ballad in which a troll asks a witcher for help. The grateful troll returned Triss's ribbon to Geralt, and so ended his part of the story. This repeats from the Sheetroll. Mighty Numa. Mighty Numa's moniker was not baseless. This huge man was supposedly had inhuman grit, which he likes to show off by, among other things, arm wrestling. He had no equals in this discipline. They said his grip could crush the hands of the weaker opponents. Many tried to win the title of a champion from him, yet nobody had managed to best him at this competition. Torak. The local runemaster had been an important figure in the dwarven community of Vergen since time immemorial. At time present, that the role was filled by Torak, a dwarf who had taken up the legacy of his master Baltimore a few years earlier. Torak ran his workshop impeccably, earning the respect and trust of his kin. He offered services of the highest quality, and like any ambitious artisan, was looking for a way to protect his techniques and abilities. Only after he died at Geralt's hand, it was revealed that Torak had been behind the disappearance of his master Baltimore. Thus ends the story of envy that pushed even an honest dwarf to crime. Cynthia. Philippa Eilhart's preferences in partners were widely known, yet they were audibly commented upon only in specific circles, and only when the sorcerers could not hear. Cynthia was Philippa's lover at the time, not the first one and probably not the last. As it turned out, Cynthia was also a spy for the Nilfgaardian Empire. However, those who could have stopped her saw through her games too late. Mile. If speech is silver, but silence is golden, then Malen must have been sufficiently rich to do something more interesting than run a shop. Nevertheless, the silent elf had some really interesting goods to offer. Felicia Cori, young sorceress from the school in Aretuza, must, apart from passing exams, complete an internship under a mistress's watchful eye. As part of such internship, the young Felicia Cori peddled magical curios of her own production in Vergen. Carlton. Revolutions breed monsters, and Carlton was one beyond all doubt. Embodying the most primitive peasant desires, frustrations, and fears, he was not bound by moral chains. Such people can commit acts most foul, and the list of this one simple farmer's atrocities was long indeed. Skallenburdon. Cecil's nephew, the young Skallenburdon, had been taken in by the alderman after the lad's parents perished in one of the non-human massacres that occurred in Erden. As friendly, hardworking, and efficient as his uncle, Skallen took it upon himself to act as Vergen's official representative in his uncle's absence, providing all newcomers to the town with any information or assistance they needed. Cecil Burden. When we arrived in Vergen, we learned that the town's elder was named Cecil Burden. This former dwarven miner was typical of his kin, realistic, substantive, and possessed of a sober outlook. Vergen needed an administrator like that, so Burden was, beyond all doubt, the right dwarf in the right place. Elias. Squazel units are made up chiefly of young, rash elves, who need not think twice before they take up arms in fight for the non-human freedom. Elias was one such elf, and he was considered one of the best warriors in Jorvet's unit to boot. Elias hired the Witcher to kill a succubus, a monster that had seduced and killed young men. The succubus, however, claimed it was the jealous elf that was actually the murderer. Indeed, there was evidence to prove her claim against Elias. When the Witcher decided to inform Jorvet about his suspicions, Elias took the chance and fled, a fact that would support the notion that his conscience was burdened. Elias hired the Witcher to kill the succubus, a monster that seduced and killed young men. The succubus, however, claimed that the jealous elf was actually the murderer. Indeed, there was evidence to prove her claim against Elias. In this situation, the Witcher decided that killing Jorvet's adjutant would prove to be the lesser evil, and so after a short fight, Elias's life ended. Okay, this is from previous chapters. Troll of Flotsam, blah blah blah, Gaspar. Okay, so that's it. Monsters. Draug. The Draug is a mystical creature straight from ancient legends of heroes and epic deeds. When the hero enters the burning hells to rescue a beloved, or when he has to avenge his father's death, the Draug is often his opponent. Why are poets so keen to cast this monster as the arch-enemy? Well, the Draug is a wraith, so it fits the story of any dark story featuring a curse of vengeance from beyond. There is no telling how it actually looks like, so its terrible visage can be described in many ways without risking accusation of confabulation. Furthermore, it is a powerful creature, a prince of the damned, so it makes an ideal villain. Rotfiend. What Rotfiends are, anyone can see. Even seeing them is not necessary, as hearing their name should be enough to tell anyone what creatures might bear this unpleasant title. The creatures multiplied after the last Northern War, and today they plague the wilderness villages and forest settlements. The Bull of War can be compared to a heap of muscles constrained by a sack of hard, elastic skin. Its head is that of the buffalo's, yet its mouth is filled with sharp teeth adapted to rending flesh. Bullavors are post-conjunction beasts. The visible mark of chaos are the horns and vestigial hands on the creature. What? The visible mark of chaos are the horns, and vestigial hands the creature barely moves, growing all over its body. Oh, those vestigial hands, I didn't even notice them, to be honest. Harpies. Some are repulsed by Rotfiends, others cannot stand to hear of Bullavors, but I find harpies, foul-tempered beasts with a penchant for thieving, the worst of all. Fortunately, the creatures prefer the wild, mountainous areas dense with rock ledges upon which they can build their nests. However, they invariably establish themselves near human settlements for the simple reason that they would be hard-pressed to find anything worth stealing among animals. Draugr. The Draug is the commander, and his raid soldiers are called Draugirs. The Draug's will calls them into existence on the battlefield or in cemeteries. Like the Draug, they are born of the damned souls and trapped shells created from the remnants of arms and armor, machines and corpses torn apart by scavengers. Bruxa. The Bruxa is a higher vampire that is a post-conjunction creature, an intruder in our world. She appears as a beautiful woman, but when she is hungry or attacking, she is terrifying. As a vampire, the Bruxa drinks blood. She often finds a victim to become her lover, and a constant supply of the sustenance at the same time. The Dun Banner rose to fame against the last wars with Nilfgaard. A Kedweni light cavalry regiment, initially it patrolled the area around Ban Glen. Called to the front, it proved its mettle during the incursion into Upper Edirn, but it was the chroniclers of the Battle of Brenna who made their unit famous. Because history likes to repeat itself, several years later the Dun Banner once again led Henselt's foray into Edirn. This time, it suffered a crushing defeat at the hands of an ostensible ally, the sorceress Sabrina Glevisig. Decimated beyond resurrection, the unit was never reformed, and its characteristic cloaks and beaver skin caps, which once bred terror in the hearts of Kedwen's foes, became a thing of the past, though they remain identifying marks by which the unit's few surviving former members can recognize one another. Okay, this actually repeats from the book I've read about it, right? Banard. Yeah, this also repeats from the book. This is stupid. Why does it do it like this? At the very least, it should be counted as read if I read the book that says the exact same thing, because among Kedveni cities, highly esteemed in Kedveni army, and if I go to my books and sort by this is the same thing. It's kind of stupid. I'm not sure who designed it and why like that. Okay, so the good book. This also repeats, and so does this. This codex is dumb. Who did that? Now, this has a couple of new entries, I think. The Wild Hunt. According to the notes of a sorcerer who spent his entire life studying the phenomenon of the hunt, there is a mysterious power behind the raid's host intrusions into our world. Mages remain silent about the hunt, as if beset by a horde of tongue-hungry cats. The silence from so many learned minds was as telling as words, but you will not learn any more on the subject from me within this tale. Philippa Eilhart also has a theory about the origin, motivation, and the essence of the Wild Hunt. It is surprisingly shallow theory for such a learned woman, and not worthy of mention next to the illustrious deductions as the ones above. There are more opinions about the Wild Hunt than there are stars in the night sky. Some claim that the hunt is a retinue of specters of knights who perished in various worlds. Others think that the phantoms were created by a powerful force that sent them into different worlds in search of slaves. The poem The Song of the Hunt is a book as rare as hen's teeth, and a pile of rubbish about the hunt at the same time. Experts on the subject are willing to kill for that item, but fortunately there are not many of them. The multi-layered narration sends the reader into the worlds of the author's rich imagination, where each verse is another interpretation. Truth mingles with fantasy in that work, but there is nothing of interest there for one researching the hunt. What is the Wild Hunt in reality? A cavalcade of riders from a world dominated by elves, riders able to travel between different dimensions. The so-called wraiths are these elven warriors' spiritual emanations. They serve a powerful race and even more powerful individuals, whose knowledge of magic and skill in this domain far exceeds those of human and elven mages of our world. Okay, so that's it as far as the codex is concerned. I will continue with the gameplay next time. For now, that's all for this one, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!